Connecting with Purpose is about doing what matters most in a time when our families, workplaces, and communities need us. This show from Purpose Views presents honest conversations about what's possible when we invest in helping our people be their best, purposeful selves. You'll hear the challenges of making those investments and tips for reaping their rewards. This show is designed to help people-first leaders like you create the impact you seek. Let me introduce you to the purpose-driven and real-talking hosts, Mark, Neil, and Nell.
Welcome everybody to Connecting with Purpose, the first episode of 2024 and one of the last couple of episodes as we close out season 2. And I've actually been really looking forward to this conversation ever since I was introduced to Mike probably a couple of years ago now, funnily enough, at a rugby match, as these things happen. But I've had the opportunity to see Mike in action with KPMG over the last 18 months or so, until his recent retirement after a 35-year career. I'm aspiring to get there. And as such, Mike's got a lot of formers in his bio. As a retired partner, so former lead partner for culture at KPMG, former lead director for KPMG, both in the US, and also former office managing partner for KPMG in Colorado. But most importantly, Mike is also a current great human being, super smart, really considerate, compassionate person and leader, and proof that even in the audit industry too, we have people first and people friendly professionals. So Mike, thanks so much for joining us for Connecting with Purpose. I really appreciate you carving out your time here and staying off the slopes.
It's a true honor, Mark. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And as we usually kind of do, nice kind of little warm-up question, or at least it's easy. It's a nice warm-up question for me because I just get to listen. But it's magic moments, and it's a kind of a 3-part question. So magic moments are these sort of, with the benefit of time, these 10 out of 10 moments, and to a certain extent, a nice way to unpack your career and life, and looking at these sort of pivotal or defining moments as you look back on your career. And if you had to pick 3, the challenge would be like, well, what would the 3 be? What is it about them that made them magic? And if you had to give each of them a name, what would you call them?
Well, I guess the first one would be, personally, just watching my kids live their dreams, Mark. I distinctly remember my daughter finding out she got accepted into the school that she wanted to go to so badly, and just her excitement and enthusiasm, and she worked so damn hard to get there. Same with my son. My son graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and he found the perfect job for him after graduation. And again, he worked really, really hard to get that job. It's his dream job. But just seeing how that hard work paid off for each of the kids was a magic moment for me, as a parent. I think professionally, there's a couple, Mark. One would be watching people that had started their career with me as a brand new, out of college, very wet behind the ears, staff professional, and watching them be admitted to the KPMG partnership. It's there aren't a lot of Big Four partners in the US and in the world. It's a very special group of people, and watching them achieve what they had set out to achieve, and watching the growth along the way and helping and supporting them was huge. And then another magic moment was kind of a tough situation, but telling a client that we were willing to walk away if they didn't treat our people better. I remember as a partner on an engagement, I came out to visit the team and the client and get some work done. And the manager told me it was a good day that day because no one had cried. And I dug into that a bit and just found that there was some things going on with the client that weren't healthy for anybody. And we figured out that I wasn't going to let my people be in that environment anymore if things didn't change. Had a very tough conversation with the chief financial officer, opened his eyes a bit, and we fixed things, and it became a terrific client relationship. But sometimes my lesson from that was learning sometimes you really have to be willing to put it on the line. In this case, a very prestigious client for our firm, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my people for it. So those are the three magic moments, Mark.
I love those. Thank you. And I actually like I like the sort of the balance between this sort of the nurturing and growth of people over a period of time, and not shying away from a tough conversation, and having your people's backs, and how probably important that feeling is for folks to know that their leaders got their backs. And when you you look at that kind of whole balance, and you look at those magic moments, and you just sort of look back generally on your career, and you think about purpose, and obviously at Purpose Fused, this is always front and center for us. And just thinking about purpose quite simply is, when you're at your very best, doing what you uniquely do, or very kind of authentically do at your best, that makes a difference on the people, organization, team, etc. that you surround yourself with. What would you say? What would you say your purpose is, and what have you kind of? How would you say you've been able to maybe apply that, or evolve that over the years?
Yeah, I love working with people, having conversations with people that helps them unlock possibilities they didn't have, they didn't think they had. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And you mentioned it earlier, Mark, about having people's back. Early in my career, when one of the managing partners at that time, I was in a situation where the firm had made a decision about an individual I worked with that was just wrong. They were making it on bad facts. They didn't understand everything they needed to understand to make the right decision. And I went to this managing partner and said, "This is just wrong. I'd like to fight it." And he listened to me and heard me out, asked me some tough questions. And then he said, "We're taking this to the top." And he showed me what happens with someone who has some authority, believes in you, and has your back. And as I had various leadership roles within KPMG, it was such a privilege and honor to have those roles. It was my obligation to make sure when situations arose where I needed to use my role and my influence to do the right thing and to show people I had their back. It's incredible what happens then, Mark. I mean, people light up. And when you believe in them and you show them that, hey, I'm with you, let's go. We didn't win all the battles, but simply being willing to fight the battle made such a huge impression on these people. And that's part of a bigger philosophy that I have is people have so much potential if you'll just show them you believe in them. And even when you put them in situations that make them uncomfortable, those are actually the best, because you put them in situations where they have to grow, but they have to know also you're not going to let them fail. And so that was kind of my leadership technique, if you will, was let's find opportunities that stretch you, that make you grow, that make you a little uncomfortable, but know that you're not going to fail. You've got a whole team behind you. That to me is super rewarding, because you just see people, they just grow in such huge ways. Their confidence, their abilities, their capabilities grow, and then they go on to do amazing things. So that's my passion, is finding those opportunities where people just light up, and they develop, they grow, they do things they never thought they could do.
I love that. And yeah, and just from my observations of just seeing you interact with people, it's so obvious that you're very good actually at, I think, helping people unearth those opportunities for themselves. Maybe that comes from that belief as well. to dig into one of the things you said, though, I'm really interested, because I think this is such an incredibly powerful piece for people, is this sense of belief, the power of believing in someone so they believe in themselves. And maybe you can even see potential in them that they don't necessarily know they have at this point. But knowing that you've got their back and you're not going to let them fail. So it gives them the confidence to maybe we'll have a go, stretch, learn, live at the edge a little bit. How do you as a leader find that kind of that balance, or like adjust the, if you like, the lead between the challenge of the stretch and people knowing that you're supporting them here or here, depending on what they need? How do you look at that kind of dynamic?
It's a great question, Mark, and one I think about a lot. I think the basis of giving people opportunities to grow has to begin with trust. You have to have a trusting relationship with a person, so you know that they're going to deliver if you give them the opportunity. And so over my career, you would just do little things where you would gauge a person's willingness to take a little risk. Did they trust you to support them? Could I trust them to deliver? And so, in the public accounting business, reputation is everything. Personal integrity, reputation for quality, reputation for doing what you say you do. And so I learned how to just little tests, if you will, but an ongoing course of engagement where we increasingly just built trust with each other. And they had to deliver, I had to deliver, but putting yourself out and being trustworthy, showing that you care, that you're doing things in their interest, not necessarily your own. All those signals, I think, build that relationship, build that foundation that says, okay, let's take some bigger risk. Let's find an opportunity. Let's go for something, that really is uncomfortable. But I think it rests on trust.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the fact that it's, like you said, it's almost like lots of little experiments. But as part of an engagement, as part of an experience, as part of a relationship, and it's just nudging the challenge up and providing business. Well, can they do this? Right, I can do this. Can they do this? I've got their back. So that it steadily builds the trust between the two, but it also builds their confidence to take on bigger things. And then I suppose together in that relationship, you can sort of take some bigger jumps then if you need to, or bigger risks.
Well, it also opens up the person's ability to say, I can't do that. And you go, okay, let's talk about that. Sometimes it's just not the right time. There's an opportunity, for example, and I would talk to somebody and they would say, you know what? We're thinking about starting a family. This is not the right time for me to take that on. And I valued that dialogue, that trust that we had with each other, where someone could say, now's not the right time for me. And it came out of a well-reasoned, this is in my best interest. And so, you move on from that, and you learn that we're going to trust each other to do the right thing. Even when we got to put some things on the back burner, we got to give someone else the opportunity, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. One of the things that I worked on as lead partner for culture was this psychological safety. And I hated the term to start with because it's just so clinical and cold. But I learned it's just it's a high performing team. It's that incredible relationship where people feel comfortable taking on new things, maybe failing, but learning, telling you no when now's not the right time. So I really strove for that sort of relationship where we could have those conversations and do the best thing for the person.
Love it. And we'll dig into a few probably examples of when some of these things have come to fruition, if you like, shortly. What I wanted to do in the meantime was kind of do the flip side. So if your purpose is partly around sort of like seeking out these conversations and opportunities that unlock potential for people through this sort of belief, and that, as you've explained, the core of trust, this kind of the stretch and the support going hand in hand. When you hear, and if and when you hear other leaders in other organizations or whatever talking about kind of purpose, and we have to be purposeful and we have to be purpose driven in our leadership, and then you actually see what they're doing and you're like, no, that's not it. What's the opposite of purpose to you in from a kind of a people perspective?
The opposite of purpose, to me, the way I think about my purpose, the opposite would be personal ambition, where you only see people as a means to your own end. I just hypocrisy, I think, is toxic. But people, and I was very fortunate in my career that the number of people that I ever worked with who viewed me as a means to get to an end, their own objective, not a team objective, not helping me. I could maybe on one hand, so fortunate. But when you see it, it's deeply offensive. Where they view people as a transaction instead of a relationship. To me, that is the height of toxicity from a culture perspective and from a relationship perspective.
Yeah, and you haven't had much experience of that, which is brilliant. What's your hunch on why? What's your hunch on why you think that exists? Because I have a feeling. I mean, for most of my clients, that's not necessarily the case for sure. But like, from my personal experience, and some of the industries I was involved with, and I saw quite a lot of that early on in my career. And what do you think the reason is for that? And why do you think, in your instance, you've been so lucky to have so little of it?
Couple of thoughts for you, Mark. One is, in our profession, everything is done in teams, and like, the sort of clients that I worked on in my career, it wasn't me sitting down and doing the audit work and issuing an opinion. It was a team. And we had a team on the ground. We had a team, in the national office supporting us. And it's very quickly, if you're not a team player, if it's all about you, you just don't succeed. And you don't advance. And so I think just the environment I was in, very fortunate in that respect. But secondly, it's culture, and you're probably not surprised to hear me say that. You've heard me talk about culture, but the cultures that tolerate individualism and tolerate kind of dog eat dog, eat what you kill mentalities, that's just not the right place for me. And so I avoided those. I avoided clients that had that sort of culture because I felt like that presented risk to me as a person signing an audit report that people relied on. Those cultures tend to be more challenging from a integrity perspective. Life's too short to work with people who don't have integrity. So it just was I guess it was a combination of the nature of the work, the cultures that I grew up in, and then I later helped to grow myself, and then the choices I made about who I worked with.
Right. Yeah, love that. And so if we're going to unpack that a little bit, when you think about some of your experiences in some of the teams or groups of folks that you've been leading and kind of been pulling together to get things done, what would be a couple of examples, if you look back on them, that you're really proud of? And if you were to unpack kind of two or three elements from a leadership perspective overall, these two or three things were the things I really did, even if you don't want to take credit for it. But what were the two or three things that you really did that helped everyone gel and have that success in these one or two examples that maybe come to mind?
Yeah, one example that sticks in my mind, and I love this. We had a client. I was the engagement partner. We had a team working hard. The client had just done a big acquisition, and there was a lot of work to get done. And it was January, February, prime ski season in Colorado, And I'd just been talking to the client, and they had told me they were going to be late with some of the things that we needed to continue our work, and that we would, we would have to work the weekend. So I went into the audit room, to the engagement room, and told my team that the circumstances we're going to have to work the weekend. And this young man, brand new, said, "Mike, I got friends coming in this weekend to go skiing, and if we can figure out how to get the work done and still have the weekend, are you okay with that?" I said, "Okay, if you can figure that out, then I'm good with that. But work has to get done, has to be high quality. The client's going to be late, so you guys figure out and tell me your plan." They did. They told me their plan. They executed it. They got the weekend, and that taught me the power of having a team that was comfortable raising ideas, because it was a win-win. The client was well served, the work got done, the quality was high, and my team was happy. And a happy team means a better team. So that was terrific. I think the other thing that I've learned, again, just the power of culture and the power of purpose, even from an organizational perspective, Mark. I worked with a lot of high growth, super fast growth, uh, venture capital, private equity backed companies. And these companies are always going after markets with bigger competitors, with more resources. And what is a small breeze to a big company is like a hurricane to these small companies. And I just saw that companies that know what they're about, that know what their purpose is, and then link their values to their purpose, and they live their values, those companies survived the inevitable hurricanes that came at them. And they did so more efficiently. They could maneuver more quickly. They were more efficient with their capital even. Their people were focused on the mission instead of a bunch of ancillary noise. They just were better run companies. So I saw that example in particular at one company that was going public, and the CFO is a remarkable guy. And he laid out this plan. It was the best planned and best executed IPO I ever worked on. And he said, "Our mission is there are no heroes in this IPO." And in a lot of IPOs, you got people working all night, you've got people flying in and lots of drama. This was a values led, purpose led company. They knew exactly what they were about. They built that into this process. It went off like clockwork, Mark. And to me, that just showed that these soft and fuzzy things, culture, values, purpose, can show up in a big project like an IPO, and it makes it better. So that was so huge for me to just see that cascade of soft, fuzzy stuff into a really challenging project, and it worked great.
I'd love to dig into both of those actually a little bit, and flip the last one a little bit as well. But with the first one, you just felt that the learning point was, wow, it's great that my team feels comfortable enough to raise ideas and bring things up that maybe challenge what my initial thoughts were, and then they actually executed on it. How do you create that relationship where, as a superior, higher authority, higher title person, your team does feel comfortable raising those ideas? Because that wouldn't necessarily be the case in all cultures. How do you personally do that?
I learned pretty early in my career, Mark, that the quality of my professional and personal life depended on the strength of my team. If I had a great team that executed well, delivered great quality, then I could do things that I wanted to do because I could trust my team. So I tried to create an environment where the titles didn't matter. Everybody had an important job to do. The newest person on the engagement, the work they were doing equally important as the work I was doing. We were a team and we had a mission. And what all the titles meant is that we had different things to do and different accountabilities. And so that to me is, well, very early in my career, I met with the CEO of a company who I just admire so much. And she told me her vision for leadership was the servant leadership, true servant leadership. Her vision for organization was like a band. Like everybody in a band has a role to play, and the leader is the conductor, trying to just make sure everybody does their part at the right time with the right noise. And that just stuck with me that nobody's job is more important than another's. We all have to do our job. My job was to make sure it all got done and everybody knew what they were to do and held each other accountable. But if I did that, good things happened. The work got done, high quality. I could, get some sleep. People got to ski on weekends. That was the goal, is that we worked together as a team and we all knew each other, that each other had a job, and we held each other accountable to that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's like kind of orchestrating that rhythm, harmony, flow, like keeping everybody understands exactly how they're contributing to the whole. And while we're performing, while we're doing this thing, it doesn't matter who you are, what your title is. Like, we all have to be in sync and we all have to be contributing in our own way. And it's easy to say, right? I think some of these things, I just think leadership generally, so much of it is easy to say, and yet it seems so often hard to do. And we'll put that onto the side and we'll come back to it in a sec.
That's a great topic too.
But to your other point on culture, purpose, values, the flip on this actually is it's brilliant to hear how that helped in this specific example, a company going through an IPO. There's no heroes here, and because they knew who they were, they'd ingrained the values and the behaviours into that was aligned to the purpose, and that helped them navigate and come through it successfully. We do tons of work on individual and, if you like, team shared kind of purpose, and aligning people's purpose to how they can contribute most effectively to the organization, but in alignment with their purpose when they're at their best, making their best contribution that also has the biggest impact it can have. When you think about culture, purpose, values at an individual level, and whether you're looking back on your own career or looking at clients, or just generally the kind of the market, what stands out to you as maybe one of the big missed opportunities there? If a company's really clear on its purpose, and a company's clear on its values and people understand what those behaviors are, that's all incredibly powerful. What's the opportunity around individual purpose and this sort of piece of my best self and how I apply that, and to what extent do you feel that has been prevalent or is more of an opportunity perhaps, from what you've seen just generally in the market or in your own career?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question, Mark. Every organization has a culture. Whether they know it or not, whether they acknowledge it or not, whether it's a good culture or a bad culture, every organization has a culture. And I think, especially in a tight labor market, when you go into an organization and you decide to be employed there, your personal brand, your precious time, pieces of your life are now invested in this organization. And I think you have to ask yourself, is this right for me? Is this really what I want to do? From an organizational perspective, I think a real challenge for organizations is to truly live their values, because employees, particularly younger employees, have incredibly fine-tuned BS detectors. And they know when purpose and values are simply things written on on the lunchroom wall. when they see things, when they see the corporation, the organization taking actions that are inconsistent with the values, the hypocrisy becomes toxic, because then they know that it doesn't matter, that the values don't mean anything, and that it's pretty much, every person for themselves. Values and culture like guide our behaviors when no one's there to tell you what to do. You have to think to yourself, what would our values tell us to do here? What is culturally acceptable? And what you want are values and a culture that keep people focused in the right direction based on what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish it. But missed opportunities are where people tune out, where organizations act inconsistently with their values, where there's no transparency to explain some of the actions you take. Maybe they are consistent with the values, but you have to explain that to people a bit. But I think that's those are some real opportunities for companies and individuals to make some pretty important choices.
Yeah, and if we sort of were to, let's say, replicate your purpose, right? Because everyone that has a well thought out purpose, that it's always around making a difference, right? And for you, when it's around having these conversations and seeing these opportunities to help people believe in themselves and stretch and grow, if every leader were to do that, every individual, every team would be stretching and growing and building trust. And it's fair to say that well-being and performance and impact, all those things would just sort of develop hand in hand. When you look at what you see current day with other big companies out there, what do you think are the biggest missing pieces or the biggest missed opportunities that if companies really grabbed onto them, they could really embrace this servant leadership and this true people forward approach to growth and challenge? What's missing?
I think it's profound. What's missing is the ability to say, I don't know, or I got it wrong, and have the team or the organization embrace that as an opportunity to learn as opposed to a failure. I think this notion of I don't know or I got it wrong is a failure is one of the biggest issues we have in business. We're seeing it all over the place. This notion that if I see something, I can't say something because that will be viewed as a failure. And we don't tolerate failure. You don't want irresponsible failure, of course. You don't want stupid failure. What you want is intelligent failure, if you will. But you have to have a culture that says, I don't understand, I don't get it, I need help, I did this wrong, what can I learn? Because that's when the magic happens, because that's the opportunity to say, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, let's learn together. You know what? I didn't know that. Let's figure this out together. That's when this trust starts to build. That's when the door starts to open and people gain confidence. But I just see it a lot, Mark, where so many silly things happen in business. And when you go back into the root cause, the culture did not support someone saying, stop the train. This is not right. We got to fix this. And I've also seen examples of companies where they have this and it works phenomenally well. Like everybody's empowered to do the right thing. And it not only empowered, but celebrated for doing that.
Yeah, I love how you've been able to pinpoint it to such a one powerful thing, because when you think about that, you can apply it at every level, and at every level you apply it at, it has even bigger kind of impact. And the from the small, like somebody who's just come from college in a meeting that doesn't want to speak up to because they feel like they haven't got courage to speak up because they feel like they're going to get pushed aside or not have an opportunity to work on something. Whereas actually, if people answered the question, they'd be like, oh, cool, I can do that. To higher up the organization where it can be actually mission critical decisions or things that go wrong with a client that can have a massive impact. But it's all about having this culture that encourages people to fail fast, learn fast, fix fast, like have conversations around that, put the hand up if they don't know, stop the train if they see things going off track, say, hey, let's redirect course. And I completely agree. What's the fix?
Trust. You got to build trust. I just think that the lack of trust is such a tax on business processes. It's a tax on personal relationships. I mean, just think about all the extra work that goes into a process trying to get something done when you don't trust each other. And trust means sometimes admitting you don't know what you're doing, but you trust that the team is going to help you get there and solve the problem with you. I think especially as problems that we are solving get more and more complex, with the help of AI, a lot of the mundane stuff is being taken away. The complex stuff is being done with people. I think if you don't trust each other, if you don't feel like you can stop the train and people respect you and trust your judgment in doing so, it's such a tax. You have to build in all these controls. You have to, build in processes. You bring in the bureaucracy, and you have a bunch of checklists now and things like that. None of those things necessarily are bad, but they are a tax and they can become overwhelming. I just don't think businesses have the time, resources, or talent to spend a lot of those resources on things that don't add value. The world's too competitive.
Yeah. And so a core fundamental for everybody is be clear on your purpose, be really clear on your values and behaviors that encourage and foster this culture of trust upon which we can build and grow together and take out that fear of failure, which is the number one biggest opportunity. Love that. Fantastic. Right. Well, we're going to come back to Mike individual now. You've retired. You've had an incredible career. I'm going to ask you two kind of final questions. If there was 3 words, if you had to just describe Mike's best self, and if you don't want to describe your best self, if everybody you've ever worked with was surveyed, and we could do a word cloud of the 3 words that came up the biggest from what everybody said about when you were at your best, what would those 3 words be?
I think they would be, one word is a hyphenated word, relationship builder. Second word would be coach. Third word would be servant. I mean, those 3.
Love it. 3 very humble answers that are incredibly powerful, because it speaks a lot to how you've been there to support everyone on the way. So last question is, what's in the future for you then? 35-year career, retired, up in the ski house. What's next?
This is such a gift, Mark, to be, a relatively young person in good health. And I've had it's actually 38 years.
Oh.
So I've had a remarkable career. I pinch myself now that I've had time to reflect on just the amazing opportunities I had and what I've learned and the people I've learned it with and had the opportunity to work with. What's next is something along the same themes. I haven't figured it out yet, haven't worked it out. I'm giving myself some time to do that, but it will be along the lines of empowerment and helping people succeed. Some of that might be person to person, working with some individuals. Others might be working with some organizations. I loved working on KPMG's board and the ability to look at strategy and think about the impact of culture on strategy. And there may be another opportunity to do some board work. So we'll see. But right now, I'm enjoying thinking about what's next. It's such a gift.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and a gift well earned. So, Well, look, Mike, thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. I always love spending time with you, and I really appreciate, honestly, the simplicity of the insights you provided, but how incredibly powerful they are if people can actually embrace them. So thank you very much for joining us today on Connected with Purpose.
Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Excellent. You're welcome.
We're energized about this journey and hope you choose to join us. Click the subscribe button now so you don't miss out on all the actionable wisdom to come.